With less than 2 weeks until final roster cuts, 3 recognizable veterans are suddenly staring down the very real possibility of losing their jobs. Stick around, because the numbers behind each of these situations tell a story that goes way beyond talent. Welcome back to the channel covering the biggest stories in the NFL. Hit subscribe now and smash that like button before we dive in, because today we're breaking down 3 established veterans whose roster spots looked completely secure when training camp opened, but now look considerably shakier heading into cutdown day. NFL teams have less than 2 weeks to trim their bloated preseason rosters down to the mandatory 53-player limit, and recent additions across the league have made several position groups uncomfortably crowded. None of these 3 players are guaranteed to actually get released, but their situations have shifted enough that it's worth breaking down exactly why. Let's start with Devin Singletary and the New York Giants. Singletary already agreed to take a significant pay cut just to stay with the Giants this offseason, with his base salary reportedly dropping from $5 million all the way down to $1.3 million, plus another $1 million available through incentives. That alone tells you something about where he sits in the pecking order. New York currently has Harris, Cam Scatebo, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Singletary all competing for carries in the same backfield. It's technically possible the Giants keep all 4 running backs, especially with Harris and Scatebo both working their way back from major injuries. But that scenario would also mean using a valuable roster spot on a 28-year-old running back who's rushed for exactly 437 yards in each of the past 2 seasons, an oddly consistent number that reflects a player who's settled into a limited role. Singletary has started just 6 games during that same stretch. Tracy actually passed him on the depth chart back in 2024, and Scatebo became one of New York's most important offensive players before a season-ending injury sidelined him last October. According to Giants coach John Harbaugh, Harris isn't even in football shape yet as he continues recovering from a torn Achilles. But once Harris does get healthy, Singletary could easily become the 4th option in a backfield that realistically only needs 3, which puts his roster spot in genuine jeopardy heading into final cuts. Next up is Sam Williams of the Dallas Cowboys, and this situation got a lot more complicated the moment Dallas signed Von Miller. That move created a real problem for every pass rusher sitting near the bottom of the Cowboys' depth chart. Williams returned to Dallas on a 1-year prove-it contract, carrying a $2.5 million cap hit, with at least $2 million of that guaranteed. That guaranteed money gives the Cowboys a real financial incentive to keep him around. Unfortunately, the actual competition at his position gives them plenty of reasons not to. Even before adding Miller, Dallas already had Rashan Gary, Donovan Eziruaku, first-round rookie Malachi Lawrence, and James Houston all competing for snaps at edge rusher. Houston himself recorded 5.5 sacks last season and reportedly strengthened his case even further with a productive preseason opener. Williams has flashed real ability since Dallas drafted him in the 2nd round back in 2022, but injuries, penalties, and off-field issues have repeatedly interrupted his development. Now at 27 years old, playing on a 1-year deal, and stuck inside one of the deepest collections of edge rushers in the entire NFL, Williams finds himself in a genuinely difficult spot. The guaranteed money on his contract makes releasing him a painful decision, but carrying 7 players at essentially the same position would be even worse for roster construction. Finally, we've got Kristian Fulton of the Kansas City Chiefs, and out of these 3, this might be the most surprising name on the list. Kansas City signed Fulton to a 2-year deal before the 2025 season, but injuries limited him to just 8 games and 2 starts that year. He now carries a $13 million cap charge, which is an expensive number for someone who could realistically open this season as the Chiefs' 3rd or 4th outside cornerback. Kansas City used the 6th overall pick in April on Mansour Delane, and Noel Williams, drafted back in 2025, is pushing hard for an expanded role of his own. On top of that, former Chief L'Jarius Sneed has returned to the roster with extensive existing knowledge of defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo's system. The current depth chart already has Fulton listed behind both Williams and Sneed. Releasing him would free up approximately $5 million in cap space, though it would also leave Kansas City carrying substantial dead money on the books. That's not typically how the Chiefs operate, and it's also not typical for them to pay $13 million for a veteran cornerback they may not fully trust to actually start games. Fulton still has time to change the conversation before final cuts. But if Delane, Williams, and Snead have already locked down the meaningful roles in that secondary, Kansas City may ultimately decide that an expensive insurance policy is a luxury they can live without. So there you have it, 3 established veterans whose roster spots looked secure just weeks ago, now facing real uncertainty heading into cut-down day. Devin Singletary is fighting crowded depth in New York's backfield. Sam Williams is caught in one of the deepest edge rusher rooms in football after Dallas added Von Miller. And Kristian Fulton is dealing with a $13 million price tag that Kansas City might not be willing to justify. Which of these 3 veterans do you think actually gets cut before the season starts? Drop your prediction in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to see this discussion take off. Do you think any of these players prove their doubters wrong, or does the crowded depth chart ultimately win out? That's our full breakdown of 3 NFL veterans whose roster futures are suddenly a lot less certain than they were just weeks ago. Roster cuts are always one of the most unpredictable parts of the NFL calendar, and situations like these 3 are exactly why teams keep everyone guessing right up until the deadline. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching through. It genuinely helps this channel grow more than you'd think. Hit that like button right now if you enjoyed this breakdown. Subscribe if you haven't already so you never miss our roster cut coverage, and drop a comment letting me know which veteran you think is most likely to be gone. We've got a lot more NFL breakdowns coming very soon, so stay subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.